Hi, welcome to today's webinar. It's an emerging technologies webinar on solar thermal for multifamily buildings. My name is Nick Durr from the Association for Energy Affordability, and I will be today's presenter. So to start, what is a solar thermal system? A solar thermal system is typically a water heating system that uses the sun's energy to heat or preheat water for use within a building, such as for showers, sinks, or laundry. They're generally designed to be used with a backup water heater, such as an electric, gas, or propane water heater. Solar thermal systems are different from a solar photovoltaic system, or PV system for short, in that PV systems use the sun's energy to generate electricity, whereas again, solar thermal systems use the sun's energy to capture heat. Solar thermal systems do not create electricity. The energy savings from a solar thermal system are based on what percentage of the annual energy it takes to heat the hot water that comes from the sun. This is known as a solar fraction. Solar fractions are typically between 25 to 70% depending on the building details and the solar thermal layout. For example, a 60% solar fraction means that 60% of the property's annual hot water energy needs is covered by the solar thermal system. The remaining 40% comes from a backup water heater, such as an electric, gas, or propane water heating system. That backup water heater is going to provide the hot water at night, on cloudy days, in the wintertime when the sun is lower in the horizon, or even during the day when there's really high periods of hot water demand, in which the solar thermal system cannot provide a hot enough water temperature unless the backup water heater turns on to boost that water to a comfortable temperature. So a solar thermal system has three main components. The first are the solar collectors, which are typically installed on the roof. Its job is to collect the heat from the sun to heat up the hot water. Second, you'll have storage tanks for the solar thermal system. The storage tanks tend to be larger than a traditional water heating system, so that you can capture as much of that heated water from the sun as possible. The storage tanks will either send the preheated water over to a backup water heater, which will then boost the water temperature over to the units, or the backup water heater will be integrated into that storage tank. Third, you'll have pipes, pumps, and controls, which are moving the water between the solar collectors and the storage tank. The controller typically is looking at the temperature of the water in the collectors and the temperature of the water in the tank. When the temperature of the water in the collectors is hotter than the temperature of the water in the tank, it'll turn on a pump to move the water from one location to the other. If the water in the collectors is the same temperature as the water in the tank, or such as at night, if the temperature of the water in the collectors is colder than the temperature of the water in the tank, then that pump will stay off. If you are considering a solar thermal system, there are a few site-specific considerations that you should take into account. First, as mentioned before, solar thermal systems typically require a larger storage tank than you would normally have for a water heating system. Those storage tanks could be 100 gallons to 300 gallons or more. You want a large storage tank so that you can capture as much of the hot water from the sun as possible when the sun's out. That way you have additional hot water to provide to your building when it's cloudy or when the sun sets. Second, there are pipes connecting the solar collectors and the storage tank. Those pipes can run through a plumbing chase or through the exterior of the building, but you need to think about the locations of where your collectors will be and where your storage tank will be. If those distances are too far, then those piping runs could be cost prohibitive. Third, you need to make sure that your solar collectors are getting ample amount of sun. So you would like those solar panels to face south if possible, because that's the sunniest part of the building. However, if the solar panels face east or west, you should be okay. There's only a small drop in production, but you definitely don't want your solar panels facing north. Additionally, you want to make sure there's minimum shade being provided by the trees or adjacent structures that might be preventing the sun from hitting the solar collectors. Finally, the solar collectors tend to be heavy, so you need to make sure they're appropriately tied down to prevent them from falling in a high wind event, and you also need to make sure that the weight of the solar panels is appropriate for your building. Whether or not your building is pitched or flat will have different impacts on how the panels are mounted and what the structural weight requirements might be. Why is solar thermal a good fit for multifamily? First, many multifamily buildings will have a central domestic hot water system that's providing all the hot water for the apartments. Because these systems tend to use a lot more hot water and energy associated with it, then when it's paired with a solar thermal system, you can have an opportunity for improved savings and a faster payback. Second, in such a system, the solar thermal system is often larger. You'll have more panels, more pipes, and a larger storage tank, but overall, your economy of scale pricing is going to go down as it would compared to a single family type system. Third, many multifamily buildings have on-site facility managers or maintenance teams. That staff is able to monitor the system to make sure it's at peak performance. And finally, multifamily buildings sometimes go through a larger rehab event. At the same time, other components may be replaced, such as the roof, and that's the perfect time to also think about when to install a solar thermal system. So why might now be a good time to consider a solar thermal system? Solar thermal systems are actually a very mature technology. They've been around since the 70s and have been improved and improved throughout the decades. The technology is mature both locally and nationwide, and there's a number of trained installers and companies that are available. Additionally, when paired with more efficient end uses such as shower head replacements or faucet aerator replacements, the overall hot water load will go down, which will mean that more of the hot water needs for the building can be covered by the solar thermal system, and thus you can get a higher solar fraction. Finally, contractors and providers are developing innovative financing models such as lease to own, so that if the property doesn't have the upfront funds now, they can pay the system back with the energy savings they'll get from the solar thermal system, and then eventually they can own the system and fully reap the benefits of those energy savings. What are some best practices to consider if you are planning to install a solar thermal system? First, it's really helpful to install remote monitoring, which can help you identify how much the solar thermal system is working and if there are any errors or alerts. You can get these errors or alerts via cell phone or email, and you can check in from time to time just to see how well your solar thermal system is doing. Additionally, it's recommended to enter into operations and preventative maintenance contracts with your solar installer or a third-party firm to check the system from time to time, maybe once a quarter or once a year, to make sure that everything's in full operating order. It's better to replace some of those components proactively than if they fail. Finally, educate your on-site staff to monitor the system. Help them understand how it works and how they can check different temperature gauges or other items to make sure that it's at peak performance. There are a number of incentives and rebates that are available for solar thermal systems. First, the federal government provides a 30% tax credit for solar thermal systems, which can help reduce the final installed cost. Additionally, if your project is participating in the Multifamily Energy Program, solar thermal systems may be eligible. The program team will evaluate your solar thermal system on a case-by-case basis, but if it's approved, it can be part of the whole building path and contribute to the project's energy savings. There are 3 incentive tiers in the whole building path. Each tier is based on a percent electricity savings over the baseline, either a code baseline for new construction or existing conditions baseline for a retrofit project. The higher the overall energy savings are expected, including the energy savings that are provided by the solar thermal system, then the higher the overall incentive for the project. If you have any questions on today's webinar or on solar thermal systems, such as whether a solar thermal system makes sense for your building or what the impact may be on your incentives, please reach out to the Multifamily Energy Program team. You can visit the website here at OregonMultifamilyEnergy.com or email any questions you have to OregonMultifamilyEnergy@trcsolutions.com. Thanks for attending today's webinar.